We're good to go.
All right, we will, we'll call the August 5th Corcoran Planning Commission meeting to order, and we will start with roll call. Commissioner Wu?
Here.
Commissioner Lanterman? He is expected to be late. Commissioner Shulak?
Here.
Commissioner Varenkamp?
Here.
And Commissioner Jacobs here. Okay. At this point, those that would like to join us, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thanks everybody for joining us here tonight. We'll take approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any changes or questions? All right, not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Variance.
I'll second that, Wu.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. Okay, tonight is item 4, open forum. Is there anybody that wishes to address the commission on open forum?
And for those in the audience or those online, this would be for items that are not on the agenda. We do have public hearings for the items on the agenda. So if those are online, you can use the raised hand function under reactions. Right now, no one online and no one in the room, Mr. Chair.
All right, we'll move on to item 5, the minutes from July 1st. Are there any questions, comments, additions, deletions, changes for the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written. Wu.
I'll second, Shulak.
All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes from July 1st, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the minutes are approved. Okay, item 6. We have several items on the agenda. We'll start with item 6A, table to September 2nd meeting, a zoning amendment for assembly uses.
Mr. Chair, we did publish a public hearing for a zoning amendment for assembly uses, but at the last council meeting, there was direction to do a bit more analysis, and so we're requesting that you simply table this item to your next meeting, which is September 2nd.
Okay. Any questions, discussion?
What is the rezoning amendment for assembly? What does it mean?
Places of assembly are places of worship, schools,
Oh, okay,
things like that.
got it. I know what it means then. Thank you.
Any others? Do I have a motion to,
So moved to table till the September 2nd meeting.
Second, Shulak.
all right, all those in favor of tabling to September 2nd, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that will be tabled to the 2nd. Okay, moving on to item 6B, public hearing. Rezoning site plan, conditional use permit, preliminary plat, and variance for garages 2 on property located at 2240 State Highway 55 and 6315 Horseshoe Bend Drive. We will entertain the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. The property is 2 separate parcels on the map there. The one to the south or the west is the property where the development is proposed, but the replat includes both parcels. The request is a rezoning from the Urban Reserve District for the development parcel, or Lot 1.
Kendra, I really apologize, but for those virtual online, it's backwards. So I need to try to fix this quick.
Oh. Very strange.
That's very strange. apologize. Normal in the room.
As far as I can get it, try to lean in.
Okay, we're okay now.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. This is a request for rezoning from urban reserve to light industrial for Lot 1 and approval of a site plan and conditional use permit for a mini storage, self-storage facility on Lot 1. And that includes 4 different variances. And then, as I said, a preliminary plat to adjust the lot line between those 2 parcels. On the screen, you can see this is in the southwest corner of the district. It is in a sanitary sewer study area. This is the land use map. You can see that light purple where the arrow is pointing is the parcel. You can kind of see the light. The property is currently, as I said, zoned urban reserve. It is guided, as you saw on the previous screen, for light industrial. And so the request is to re-guide the property, or rezone the property to the light industrial consistent with the underlying land use. Both of the lots in question are zoned urban reserve. Lot 1 is guided light industrial, and Lot 2 is guided low-density residential. Both have existing homes on them today. Lot 1's home will be removed and a new self-storage facility would be built with 4 new buildings. Lot 2 will remain unchanged in terms of structures. It's simply the developer is giving some of the land from the industrial parcel over to the residential property as part of this project. The concept plan was reviewed by the council at the March 14th council meeting, and the council was generally supportive but did voice a lot of concerns about making sure that the development provided transition to the adjacent residential and appropriate screening in compliance with the ordinance. The developer has been working with adjacent landowners, and that's where this lot line adjustment came into play. The council also discussed business operations and access to Highway 55, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Detailed operations were in the applicant's narrative, which were in your packet. The rezoning, as I said, is just for Lot 1 to rezone to light industrial from that urban reserve district, and that is consistent with the purpose and intent of the district. However, the code does say that you can only be rezoned to light industrial and developed in the light industrial district if municipal sewer and water are available. That is the first variance that's requested. And we'll talk about that later, but we have a study area here. Sewer and water is not available in this part of the city. I wanted to note, however, because of the lot line adjustment, a portion of Lot 2 will be guided light industrial due to the lot line change. So there's a little corner, and I'll show it on the next slide. That's not inconsistent with the urban reserve zoning district. It doesn't create any nonconformities for the landowner. And in our staff report, we said we think that can remain until the comprehensive plan update in 2028. There's no burden on the landowner. However, certainly the Planning Commission could say we really want to clean it up and require a comprehensive plan amendment. That is not in the draft resolution. That is not staff's recommendation. The area outlined in green is being, as part of this subdivision, given from the industrial property to the residential property. And so that's the little piece of the new lot that would be guided industrial underneath that residential lot. Again, we're comfortable with that. We think that when the lot lines get adjusted as part of the cleanup with the next comp plan, that'll get corrected. So we're comfortable with that as part of the rezoning and do support the rezoning. This is the site plan. There are 4 buildings. You can see a new stormwater management pond that straddles the new lot line in the northeast corner of the site. Access is coming up from Highway 55 on the south, and we'll talk more about that later. And then there's a loop through the site to service the 4 new buildings. The applicant has tried to slide the drive aisles and the buildings as far south as possible on the site towards the industrial properties to the south and away from the residential on the north. You will note that it's a little bit hard to see, but there's some heavier white lines which are retaining walls along the west, south, and southeast corner of the property. The building materials do comply with these basic zoning ordinance standards for industrial users. We did review the Southeast District guidelines, and those are very minimal. It really just says high-quality architecture and well-landscaped buffers. It's not as robust of a design guideline as the Southeast District. But the applicant did upgrade Building A, the building at the site entrance, with additional architectural features, and has worked to orient the unit entrances away from the residential area, so none of the doors open towards the homes. The unit facing closest to the homes on the north is not the wall with the doors. It's got some windows to break up the elevation, however, and add some interest on the back. So this image was in your packet, and this is an image of Building A, the entry building. The rest of the buildings do not have the lap siding on the front like this does. They do have a little bit in the end caps or the peaks on the ends of the buildings. But it is a rock face block, a mix of light and dark gray, so it creates a darker gray base with the wainscoting there. Asphalt shingles for a more residential look as part of that transition from the industrial property on this site to the residential to the north. This image is Building A, and it's the one at the entrance to the site. So you'll see on the south elevation on the bottom of the screen, it's got that sort of more residential face to it. The other buildings are more like the pieces, the four doors on the west side of that. But you can see on the end elevations, you've got the dark stone or rock face, and then the light gray rock face, and then the top is that LP siding. So it's high-quality finishes on the buildings. On the rear elevations, they do have those windows which add some light into the individual units, but also help to break up the rear elevation, which would otherwise be a fairly long blank wall. Landscaping, the code requires 62 trees and 207 shrubs for this site. The plan shows preservation of 15 trees, 47 new trees, and 207 shrubs. And so as noted in the staff report, and we've talked about this recently on other projects, our code does not have a tool to give credit for existing trees. So the staff report does include a condition requiring the addition of 15 additional trees on site, which could be accomplished on that west elevation or with some more staggered trees on the north elevation. However, we do appreciate retaining the 15 trees in the southeast corner of the site, and the Planning Commission could certainly discuss that. But again, the staff report resolution does include adding 15 additional trees to meet the letter of the zoning ordinance. This isn't a PUD where we have flexibility to kind of modify that, but it would be good to get some Planning Commission feedback on that part of the code. You saw a little bit of it. The bulk of the trees are focused on that north elevation. Again, that's the elevation or the side of the lot that butts up against the residential homes. The nearest home on the north is 142 feet from the structures. And the structures, the self-storage structures, are significantly higher than the homes. They are 15 to 27 feet higher than the homes on the north. And so providing some screening and transition has been challenging, but the applicant has provided a staggered row of trees with a mix of both conifer and deciduous trees. They've also worked with the 3 landowners directly adjacent to the north and provided 8 trees on those parcels. Those are not included to meet the landscape requirements, but certainly do help to provide that transition, particularly given the grade changes. And then really focused a lot of the shrub plantings at the base of the buildings to help kind of soften the look of those long buildings. So in this image, you can see the landscaping on site really focused on the north. It does wrap around the side of the pond to provide screening for the landowner to the northeast. That's part of the plat. The preserved trees are in that southeast corner, and then a fair amount of landscaping on the south, but really nothing on the north. The west. Both the south and the west do have retaining walls, but The west retaining wall is about a foot high, and we feel like you could add those missing trees there, or again, a few more staggered trees on the north elevation to meet the code requirements. But really done a nice job of really trying to provide that buffer and transition to the residential. Again, this property is guided and planned for light industrial uses. Access, as I mentioned, to the site is from Highway 55, so it comes across three separate parcels to get to this property. The first parcel adjacent to Highway 55 is actually in the city of Medina. That's on the municipal border. The second parcel is in Corcoran. Both of those parcels are owned by this applicant. And then in between is a parcel owned by Medina Electric. So there's an existing driveway easement that will be used to access the site. There is some expansion of the access proposed on the southernmost site that they do own adjacent to Highway 55. We did include letters from MnDOT in your packet. MnDOT does require access permits, but they have reviewed it and do not believe this meets warrants for any turn lanes or signals on 55. And we've also been talking, both the applicant and staff have been talking with the city of Medina about whether they will require a permit for that expanded driveway on 55, and we've not yet obtained clear direction from Medina, but we are continuing to speak with them. I left another message yesterday. So we've included a condition that they either need to comply with the city of Medina permit standards or initiate annexation of the property from Medina to Corcoran. That access to 55, however, is intended to be a temporary solution. Long-term, the Southwest District plans do show a frontage road, which is shown on your screen. It was also in the staff report, connecting Pioneer Trail to Rolling Hills Road. In fact, back in 2005, it was actually designed by the city, not ready for construction, but was designed. So when that frontage road is built, the access to 55 must be deleted, or eliminated. I shouldn't say deleted, eliminated, and their access would be from the frontage road. And we've included that as a condition of approval. There is no parking on this site. Excuse me. The applicant's covenants, as he describes them, will not, people are picking up and dropping off materials. Our code does not allow overnight parking. He has indicated that in his narrative, no overnight parking is allowed, and he has arranged with a towing service to enforce that rule. There is adequate drive aisle between the buildings to allow a customer to park in front of his or her unit, unload, load, and still allow emergency vehicles to maneuver through the site. Public Safety has reviewed the plans and is comfortable with the plans. They do want to see the exhibit showing the turning radiuses, but they're generally comfortable with the plan. The parking drive aisle area from the south property line does require a variance, and we'll talk about that a little later. I mentioned stormwater pond in the northeast corner of the site straddling the Lot 1 and Lot 2. We have included a condition that the applicant is responsible for owning and maintaining that stormwater structure. It will be partially located on that residential property, but this developer will enter into a stormwater maintenance agreement with the city, and this developer will be responsible for the maintenance of that pond. There is an existing well serving the home on Lot 1 today. That will be removed according to state standards. No new utilities are proposed for this site. The applicant does not have an on-site caretaker. They are not planning to provide water to the units or septic facilities. No restrooms are proposed on the site. It truly is the intent to come in, drop off your materials, store your supplies, pick them up, and leave. The dedication of the new drainage and utility easements are required as part of the lot line adjustment, and that helps us in the future when sewer and water is available. It gives us other alternatives for extending those services. And sewer and water are planned to be, municipal sewer and water is planned to be provided to this site in the future, As you saw in that first land use screen, this is a study area, however, and the Met Council, as part of our comprehensive plan, has agreed to work with the city to complete a study in advance of our next comprehensive plan update. However, our code says if you are in the MUSA, you cannot develop unless you have sewer and water available, municipal services, and so a variance is required, and we'll be talking about that in a couple of minutes. The conditional use permit is to allow self-storage. Those are conditional use permits in the I-1 districts. I have reviewed the conditional use permit standards in the staff report, as well as the specific standards that apply to self-storage units like this. The variances. There are 4 variances from the urban reserve lot size and lot width standards for Lot 2. As the commission may recall, in the urban reserve, that's a holding zone until sewer and water is available. And so the intent is to keep large parcels so that subdivision is possible when sewer and water become available. The property, Lot 2, the residential home that will remain, does not comply today. It's a legal non-conforming lot of record, but will not comply after the plat, and so that requires a variance. However, it will reduce its nonconformity because it is getting bigger. Lot 1 does comply with the industrial standards for lot size. It does not comply with the lot width requirements because it doesn't have frontage on a public street or a private drive, and so that's a second variance. The drive aisle parking setbacks are not met for the I-1. That should be, the front lot line is considered where access is provided. So that would be the south lot line, and that has a 50-foot setback, and they are not complying with that and asking for a variance from that. And it will function in the future more as a side lot line when the industrial property to the south redevelops. And then the 4th variance is the connection to municipal sewer and water. And I'm not going to go through them all tonight. I did outline that in the staff report, and we do believe that there are practical difficulties in complying with those standards on this unique site, this legal non-conforming lot, and we do recommend approval of the variance for the findings outlined in the staff report. Again, the preliminary plat is really that corner we talked about earlier, is a shared lot line today, and a portion of the industrial property will be transferred to the residential property on Horseshoe. There are no other changes to Lot 2. They're simply acquiring a little bit more land. And with the variance discussed for the minimum lot size for that Lot 2 and the frontage variance for Lot 1, it does comply with the ordinance requirements. Again, Lot 1 will decrease from a little over 5 acres to a little under, and Lot 2 will go from 1.67 to just over 2 acres in size, so decreasing the nonconformity. No new lots are created, therefore no park dedication is required, but the variances are needed as discussed. Staff does find that the proposed development on Lot 1 is consistent with the anticipated uses in the light industrial district, and we've included conditions to address outstanding issues and ensure compliance with the zoning ordinance. We've identified a couple of items that we think specifically warrant Planning Commission discussion tonight. This is a public hearing, and I would note that we received 5 letters or emails, and they were all emailed to the commissioners in advance of the meeting. So if you did write a letter, the commissioners do have those, and those are entered into the record as if you had read them into the record. Staff does recommend approval, Mr. Chair, of the 5 ordinances and resolutions as outlined on the slide and in the staff report. Happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Much appreciated. Okay, at this time, we will open the public hearing. And for those online, Brad will give you instructions. I believe first we'll take questions and comments from those in attendance at City Hall, and then we'll move to those of you on Zoom. So
That's correct, Mr. Chair. So we'll start with those in the room here. Again, those online, please use the raise your hand function, either under reactions or participants. And here, we'll start with Jim, if you want to start first, if you want to go to the podium.
Well, first of all, I have a question.
Sorry, Mr.
Sir,
A lot of this information is.
If you could go to the podium, please, and state your name for the record.
You need to go to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Okay. I've got brand new hearing aids that ain't working. Oh. Is this on?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, my name is Jim, the last name is Reeder, R-E-A-D-E-R. I live on Rolling Hills Road. I've been there 52 years. Same address, same house. Shortly after we moved out there, a storage unit place was put up next to me in Medina. I'm in Corcoran. My lots, the south side of my lot is also the north side of the existing mini storage unit that's on Highway 55. Okay, what I noticed most about that, well, let me back up a step. Do you have copies of those nice maps? Because none of us have heard anything, at least I haven't, about L1 and L2.
We certainly, for the, do you want me to answer that, Brad?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, by all means, please do.
I was just going to say, we certainly can make that information available to anybody. If they contact Brad tomorrow, he can get you copies of the information, but there are paper copies at the door of everything that was submitted with the packet as well. And a copy of the packet is available online.
Would you like one for your discussion here tonight, right now?
Well, is L1 one of the pieces owned by Garage 2? The Hennepin County map, the tax map, shows two pieces of land owned by Garage 2.
Okay, yeah.
And I thought we were talking only about one of them, the one that abuts the residential places on Horseshoe Bend Trail.
For the most part, that would be true.
What's that?
For the most part, I believe that's true, because the development, there's only an easement that goes through the first one closest to Highway 55, correct?
You're speaking of the south one,
Yes.
and that one you call L1 or L2?
I don't believe we've referred him to that in, as you see on the diagram there.
Yeah, I do.
Lot 1 would be the larger one where the storage units are going to go. Lot 2 would be the residential unit.
So we're speaking residential too, also?
It's existing.
Exist,
I don't think any of us here have heard of that, unless they've attended previous meetings and you've discussed this. But let me go through the points that I wanted to make. I said I've been living in the same place for 52 years, and these storage units that are on 55 right now, 55 Rolling Hill Road, were built sometime after we moved in. I didn't complain about the units moving in because they met the existing zoning standards, and I knew of them before I bought the place that I'm at. So I had no right to bitch. Okay, what I can remember about the storage units is the visits. The visits from the Medina police. What did you see? What did you hear? 1, 2, maybe 3 times a month. And there's a large berm between my place and the storage units. I really can't see what's going on down there. But, and now there's huge trees there. But believe me, I remember the visits from the cops. They must have been alerted by one of the renters who found a lock broken and stuff missing out of his locker. I hate to see that come again. No one wants to see robbers close to where they live. Okay, then we got a new owner, and things changed drastically. There were additional units that were added, and more importantly, there was a chain link fence put around the whole thing. There's a gate that moves sideways, to activate the gate, you have to put a code in on a keypad, and that seems to work very nice. I haven't had any visits from the Medina Police since the new owner took over. Okay. And now, the effect on Corcoran zoning. Now, in Corcoran, as we all know, you have no railroad. You have no state road. You do have some county roads. Excuse me, we have a short piece of state road, which is Highway 55. And that touches Corcoran for about a mile and a half west of what we're talking about here. Okay. Sooner or later, the land on Rolling Hills Road will be built on, excuse me. That will probably be 7 microseconds after the sewer is approved. I think that's the main thing that's holding it up. Anyway, those places that build there will probably be stores, small businesses, and the proposed storage unit places are sort of pushing development to industrial or higher. And that's what you don't want when you're a planning commission. So, but the area along 55 needs sewer before anything can happen there. And in summary, I think you folks would do well to sit down with the Metro Council and push sewer rather than the development that you're talking about now. Therefore, I oppose it. Thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Mr. Chair, next we had, is it Greg and Rebecca?
What? What's what?
Your address.
Right there. Who are you?
I'm a guest.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Gunderson, and I live at 6300 Horseshoe Bend Drive. Our property would be located across the street from this. I guess my first question is, initially when I listened to one of the meetings, it says that this storage facility was going to be used for commercial storage. Electricians to store their goods, plumbing to store their goods. And in the recent one, I read that it is no longer commercial, that it has been changed to RV storage and car storage. So it sounds like it's more of a put your classic car in there, store your RV in there, store your boat in there. And I guess I'm questioning first, what is this storage facility for?
Okay. You're free to address us, and we'll try to answer those questions after everybody has spoke. If there's not a question that we can answer, we'll certainly maybe have someone from staff get back to you.
We've taken notes and we'll answer all the questions afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay. My concern is that, yes, this is supposed to be initially transferred over to light industrial. However, it's not right now. Right now, in order for it to be that, it's not that this facility fits into that lot. We're looking at massive variances for it to happen. Right now, where our property is, we're at the very end of the lovely hill that's there. Our lot floods out. Not only does our lot flood out, but we have a man-made pond on our property that overfills, floods out, and the water goes across the road into the next areas of holding facilities. And I think the pond is great, but we can already look from what we have without sewers. Ponds don't do anything when there isn't any sewers out there. We have major concerns about our property with flooding. It is not unusual, and if you guys would like, we will go back in our history and find the videos of water rushing down those driveways, flooding out Horseshoe Bend, flooding out the drainage ditches, flooding out the yard in front of us where half of their property is no longer usable, and flooding out our property to where we have now taken out flood insurance because of the fears of the way the land drains already. A holding pond isn't gonna do it. Ours doesn't do it. The people's across the street doesn't do it. There needs to be sewers. If this building were going into a position where it met everything, all of the qualifications without needing variances, we wouldn't have a whole lot to argue about. But when you need 4 variances, which aren't just small variances, they're great variances, that amount of tar being put on the top of the hill with a small holding pond is not going to do anything to save my basement, which has already been replaced twice in the last 5 years because of flooding. We're at the bottom of the hill. There's more to this and more things that need to be done with it. As far as what Jim Reeder said, we have a storage facility already. It started out as 1 building. It now increased to 3 or 4 buildings. Yes, it's got a fence around it, but the one thing that Jim failed to say, a whole bunch of people from that storage facility throw their trash at that little line marker where our future frontage road is gonna go in. It's a regular occurrence. It's not an occasional occurrence. The owner of that land now has a string across it saying that it's private property to try to get people to quit throwing their stuff. They move out of the storage facility, they dump their stuff there because it's the easiest access. That's if this building is going to be something that's going to be the same use as the one that we already have. We don't need another one within a couple of blocks. If this is going to be a commercial storage facility, our property is built so that if you are talking on one property, the people who are an acre away can still hear you. It bounces off of the houses in that area. If we use this as a commercial storage facility, the beeping of those trucks is going to be unbearable in our neighborhood. You can hear it, and you can go to any house around there and ask if you can hear it, and you can. I am very concerned about our house. I'm very concerned about our property value, and I don't feel that we should pass something that doesn't meet without needing 4 variances. Thank you guys for your time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Paula, did you want to speak at all?
Everything I wrote is probably got answers to it now.
And just your address for the record too, Paula?
6330 Horseshoe Bend.
Thank you.
So we've lived there, me and Rick, built a house on 6412 and then built on 6330. So we're across the hill of where this is. So my main concern is we just found out about this about a week and a half ago, all of us. So we're neighbors. I was talking to some this morning that we have no idea what's going on. We don't understand it. We see the sign on the property that says this and that, and all confusion. So I had come to get a 50-page. They said there's a 50-page thing, and computer literate as some of our older ones are here. I came in to get a printout, and she said I'd have to pay for it or something. So call someone the next day. I left a message today. Nobody got a hold of me either. So my daughter's madly, Mom, 50 pages. So all day today, talking, running neighbors. What do you know? What do you do? So my main concern was they had said MnDOT said that the access into 55, which we went and looked, it's horrific. I mean, it's right past how are they going to get in there and what are they going to do? It's terrible. I mean, we just are lucky we got our turn, to get into Rolling Hills Road, because I will tell you there's a child that has died there. We could barely, ever make that turn into 55. So we feel comfortable with that right now. I have no idea how they are going to get past there and make that turn and go in there without, 55's dangerous, very dangerous. So my daughter was saying, well, Mom, they were thinking, MnDOT was saying maybe use Horseshoe Bend Drive. Well, that would be, so that's what I'm concerned about. Children, grandchildren, this is a residential area that's been forever. we, big concerns with that. Like, we were saying, we don't have sidewalks. The kids ride on the road. It's like a country road with tar. I mean, we've been there, same people, we've had almost the same people. There's so many that have been there for so many years. This is our home. We have questions. This seemed like came up pretty fast. And, I don't know, that's why we're here. We're just like, it seems like it's going fast. We don't know. This is a question too. With the number 2, if that ever was sold, does that mean that they could then come up close where we would see it on the north side? Would we see if they put more buildings, if that number 2 lot would get?
You mean if the residential lot sold and they
Yeah.
tore
could
it
they
down?
ever,
Well,
that-
no.
The one, there's lot 1 and 2. If 2 ever sold off, could they ever make that?
This is what's on it.
Are you talking about the existing residential home?
Yes.
Yeah, lot 2.
Yes, because they sold off some of their land. If they ever sold, would that ever be where they could become that light industrial, or where they could take that and then we could see it more from our, that's a question.
We've got the note.
We got the note. I can't see a day in which that would happen, but,
Well, that's a question.
I mean, that's not to say your concern isn't legitimate, but,
Right.
yeah.
I don't know, they're showing me something here. Plans show the existing accessory structure on proposed lot 2 meets the standard for accessory structure footprints, setbacks from the rear and the side property lines. Based on an aerial photo, the 3 additional accessory structures may be located on proposed lot 2. That's in there, which are not delineated on site plans or certificate of survey.
I think they're talking about accessory buildings that are going to be built on that residential lot.
No,
We can
no.
address that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not
Is
it.
residential anymore?
We have a note, we'll answer, keep
Yeah.
coming and we'll answer everything.
Keep going.
So,
We're together on this one.
but, so that's our concerns. It just came up fast. We're like, what's going on? And so that's why we're concerned. A lot of the neighbors really don't understand it, and it's probably why they're not here. As I talked to a couple today, they're like, what? What is this? What, you know? So, anyway, as long as we know that it's, my thing is that our residential is never, we are the way we are. And we can live the way we've been living, and it's not imposing on us all, and we're, afraid. Some of Rebecca's concerns were very good about, and they're leaving garbage, and you hearing things. We do echo. I'm telling you, this is Rolling Hills Road, and all of Horseshoe Bend is a horse farm. It echoes. You can hear people all over the place. So we do hear things, so that's it.
Okay.
So I don't know, I'm on the fence, really, big time. If it doesn't never, ever come where they have any access through Horseshoe Bend, then I guess, I don't know, I'm on the fence.
Okay.
A&A.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we have one online virtual. Gary Ort, if you want to try to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Just a minute. Check the volume here. Gary, are you there?
Hi, hello?
Hold on. Sorry.
Can you hear
Gary,
me?
I can see that you're speaking, but we can't hear you here in the room. I apologize. Probably. Gary, can you try now? No, still not working. Gary, why don't you try one more time?
Test one.
Hey,
Gotcha, Gary. Go ahead.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Gary Ort. I live at 20600 County Road 30 in Corcoran. I know that's a ways away from this development or proposed development. However, I drop my 3 children off on Horseshoe Bend Road 5 days a week at the licensed daycare facility, Circle of Friends Daycare. With that said, knowing part of the reason why we selected that daycare was not only the people, but the location. It's quiet, there's not a lot of traffic, and the concern I have is the Minnesota Department of Transportation letter that is included in the planning packet on page 48 recommends access through Horseshoe Bend Road with trailers due to the high-speed, high-curve access at 55. What is the council planning commission's plan if MnDOT does not allow the continued access for the fact that there is that high-speed, high-volume roadway without turn lanes, and you're expecting traffic that is most likely either RVs, trailer vehicles, large commercial vehicles, etc., that can't make that turn, one, in or out, and then now you're asking to take all that heavy vehicular traffic on the road, one, that's not built for it, and two, past a daycare facility that was never designed to have said traffic, and then creates a child safety hazard when I'm loading my kids in and out of the car. That address, not to mention the fact that there's going to be noise and light pollution from the industrial traffic, the beeping, the lights, the fact that it's a 24-hour access storage station. Not that that would matter for the daycare, but just the fact that that would then annoy the neighbors and potentially keep them up. So those are the concerns that I have with this.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
That is all at this time, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else in the audience?
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
Thank you. One of the things that was brought up is the potential of going down Horseshoe Bend, which I don't think that any of our neighborhood understands, just because it's beyond dangerous. For our 17-year-old daughter who's going to be getting her license in another 2 weeks, the rule is she has to drive down Rolling Hills, she has to get on Horseshoe Trail, which is a dirt road, and she has to take it up to Willow to get on a stoplight. It's not something. We've talked about the little boy that died on that corner. My husband tells about how he was out working in his conditional use garage at that point as a mechanic, and remembers hearing when that glass truck slammed into that car. It's something that the neighbors are never going to forget. One of the things that my husband said to me when he said, "You forgot to say, our house is located on the corner. At least once a year, if not more, in the winter, there's Rolling Hills comes over and it's a slight hill. There's driveways there that are non-visible that you have to be going slow. Unfortunately, we have a speed problem on Rolling Hills like nobody understands. But the problem is people come over and when they go to turn onto Horseshoe Bend, at least a minimum of once a year, they go right over into our side yard, lots of times hitting the utility green box that's there. It kind of sits at an angle now because I think they've just kind of given up on fixing it. And the one thing that I say is regardless of where we go with this and what you guys decide to do with this, there has to be something in there that says that no traffic is going to come down Rolling Hills and onto Horseshoe Bend. Especially right now, Rolling Hills is shut down for weight at least once a year in the spring, that people are not allowed to drive on there depending upon what the weight is. So if it's something commercial, that's going to be an issue too. But I don't think that there's anybody in the neighborhood that would be okay with that traffic being diverted onto Horseshoe Bend. We don't have sidewalks. We can't walk our children on Rolling Hills. Our only place to take our dogs, take a run, I don't run, but lots of people do, or walk our children is on Horseshoe Bend. And that to me, and I think that I can honestly speak for everybody, is not an option. Anyway, thank you again for listening.
All right, thank you. Okay, Brad?
That is all we have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Seeing that there's not any other public comment, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair?
Can I say one thing before I do?
Sure.
You already got my address, that's my wife.
Okay.
I'm Rick Hendrickson. Yeah, I'd like to know what kind of, the security system stuff that they're gonna have there and the lighting. If they're gonna look like we're gonna have a baseball game going up there every single night with all these lights. Is there gonna be a lot of light? It's gonna look
Again,
like there's a big glowing.
yeah, so in the presentation and the materials, it talks about the lighting and the security. So some of that will come out, and if we don't, we'll try to answer those right after we close the public hearing.
Well, we see what you had on there, and it's just, things change once they're done.
Hey, well,
Mr. Chair?
yeah,
Before I make a motion to close the public hearing, can I speak
absolutely.
freely? Folks, we are all volunteers. We are all citizens of this town, okay? One of your comments was you've heard about this a week and a half ago. We received this packet for the first time last Thursday. So we've only had a week to review it. And every one of your thoughts and concerns are on every one of our minds, just as if we were living in the neighborhood with you. So please understand that. I always try to diffuse. It's not, we've made decisions, we've done things. We want to know, or we want to do what's best for our city as all volunteers up here. And we hear each and every one of you speak. We understand the passion. We understand all of these things. Every development that comes in front of us has got a lot of these same things. And I wanted to thank you guys for presenting and talking the way you are. All the respect, everything, but all concerns that we have as a planning commission, okay? We are just a recommending body to the council, and the council takes it from that point. We have one council member here incognito in the front row, and it's not the older gentleman, so just FYI. So we truly do care very much about our community, and then we need to understand, I hope you all understand what I'm talking about. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing, and thank you all for your input.
I'll second that word.
Okay, any other further discussion? All right, all those in favor of closing this public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Okay, Brad and Kendra, would you like to knock off as many of the questions as you can?
Sure. I think the big concern is that unfortunate MnDOT letter, so I think I'll start with that. MnDOT saw a plat that included a property on Horseshoe Bend. That property on Horseshoe Bend is not part of the development. Nothing is happening on that property. That is a homeowner who, when he heard from this developer, negotiated to get more land for his lot. But he is not doing anything there, and there is no access proposed to Horseshoe Bend. The only access to this site is off 55. I've spoken to the MnDOT person who wrote that letter. They do understand that. Permits will be issued along Highway 55 access. That is the only access to this site. But again, long-term, we are also concerned, and MnDOT is concerned about that access. So as property here develops, we have a design for a frontage road that will connect Rolling Hills and Pioneer and will close accesses onto Highway 55 there. So just to put that concern to bed, there will not be an access to Horseshoe Bend as part of this project. And the home that is on Horseshoe Bend that's being replatted with this is not changing. That is still residential property and could not be developed as industrial, as an expansion of this mini storage, unless there was a public hearing to reclassify it in the comprehensive plan and rezone it. So that is not on the table tonight. I know that was a big concern. Second, there was a question about is it commercial storage or not? And the applicant is here, can speak a little bit to it, but just to clarify, Businesses can use this for commercial, but what our code prohibits is you operating a business out of a mini storage unit. You cannot have customers coming to this unit to buy your, whatever it is that you make, but you can come there in the morning, pick up your plumbing supplies, and go to the job site. And so it can be used as storage for a commercial business operation, but you can't operate a business out of there. You can't have an office there. You can't have all of your employees meeting at the site. And the applicant can maybe talk more about how they manage that, but that's the difference between commercial use and commercial operations. The question about lighting. There is lighting on the buildings. There are no parking lot lights. There is lighting at the doors, and that lighting must comply with our ordinance standards, which requires 90-degree cutoffs, so it can't just shoot up into the sky. It does have to direct the light down to the ground and to the door. This does not have a fence. There was a fence question and a security question. There is not a fence wrapping around this self-storage, and the applicant talks about security in his narrative, and he's here and maybe could talk a bit more about that.
Kendra, can I just to clarify on the lighting then? The lighting is only on the sides with a drive, correct? So let's take that north side and the east side. Would there be lighting on the back of those buildings towards the residential section?
There would not be.
Okay,
It's
so
only
that'll
where
be
the
dark.
overhead doors are on the
Okay, so
south
the lighting would be
internal.
internal to the site, nothing on the perimeter near the residential?
Correct.
With the exception of maybe the southeast corner by Building A?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that was it, other than the stormwater question.
The only one I had, Kendra, was there was something about 3 additional accessory structures on lot 2.
Yeah, that comment is, again, Lot 2 is a residential home that's there today. They are not changing anything. That homeowner shows on the survey provided by the developer, shows some accessory buildings, and the aerial survey shows 3 additional buildings that aren't on the certificate of survey, and we want some clarity on that. It doesn't matter, I just think there's more buildings than these plans show, but nothing's changing related to those buildings. So the applicant maybe has addressed that and can talk about that.
Yeah,
It's
I
nothing.
know one pole building has been built, and it does show on the aerials, but you're right, I think it's close to that concrete
Yeah,
pad.
there are a couple little buildings on the aerials, and maybe the aerial's outdated and those buildings have been removed, but there are a couple buildings that show on the aerial that don't show on the official survey, so we just want some clarification. But nothing new is planned on Lot 2.
Okay.
That's my property, by the way, and those are just the buildings that are shown on there that are.
Which should be shown on the survey, so we'll get an update.
It is a building, regardless of what you use it for, it is a building.
But that's, I'm just clarifying that's what the buildings are.
Yep.
on the property.
Yep.
And then there was a question about stormwater, and I think it might be best for the developer to answer that question. I don't see his engineer here, but maybe somebody from the development team.
If you
can
want to answer that, the short answer is that this, obviously, there's an engineer's memo regarding stormwater that has to be approved with conditions to make sure that anything does not happen to add additional stormwater to adjacent properties. But I don't know if there's anyone from the applicant who wants to talk stormwater at all on top of that.
Can we maybe get clarification where 6300 is?
We are located on the corner of Horseshoe Bend Drive and Rolling Hills, on the north corner.
North side.
Okay, you know, unfortunately, we don't have a map that shows how far you are away from that. And I guess I'm only bringing that up because I was at the site, and I certainly can see where runoff would flow north through the Benton property. And then there will be some runoff from the ponds onto Lot 2. And if you're telling me you are really far east, I guess I'm not quite seeing how the runoff from this site.
Goes across the road and it goes in.
We're at the bottom of the hill. All of that is built on a hill. We are at the bottom of the hill. So what happens is all of the properties on the south side, they have drainage ditches, but the majority of the water runs down their driveway onto Horseshoe Bend Drive, across Horseshoe Bend Drive, into our property. Our house is a little bit elevated. Then their property also, because of the way it is, their water runs down through backyards and actually creates a river in our backyard into our pond. So like our backyard right now is not usually accessible until the end of June because you could step in our property and sink down because there is standing water. The house is across the street. It either comes down the road or it comes down their driveway and sways down the road. So if that storage pond can't hold the water and it goes into Lot 1 then drains down the hill and comes into our property.
We'll see if the developer has any comments on that.
Mr. Chair, so I'm Brad. If you want to follow up with me after the meeting too, we can connect with our city engineer. But there's a stormwater memo in there too we can walk you through.
Thanks.
But in time before council, see if you have more comments.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Those are the ones we had.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will now have commission discussion and recommendations. Anybody like to start off? Okay, I will. Page 3. So, Kendra, when you said at the next plan update, a cleanup, so the new lot, so until then, Lot 2 is going to have a dual, will have a dual zoning,
Correct,
I-2 and residential.
correct.
When,
No, I'm sorry, not correct. A dual land use
or
designation.
dual land use. So when that gets cleaned up, the lot line goes through the pond. Will half that pond then be UR?
The pond will be half UR on the day this project's built.
Yep.
And the pond, if the land use doesn't change, will be entirely in the light industrial land use designation. If I can maybe show the screen just to walk through it one more time. So the existing lot, the industrial lot, is here. And so all of this is in the light industrial land use designation today, this entire lot right
Yep.
here. This lot, which is oddly shaped today, is all in the low-density residential land use designation. When we move this lot line from here over to here, this little corner of Lot 2 will retain, if we don't do a comprehensive plan amendment today, the light industrial land use designation. But the entire parcel, Lot 2, here, will retain the urban reserve zoning. And what I'm saying is urban reserve can go over any land use. So it doesn't really matter until sewer and water gets here that it's got a mixed land use underneath the urban reserve zoning district, because the zoning can't change until sewer and water get there, and it will not get there before us doing our new comp plan in 2028.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, with selling the, Lot 2 potentially or anything, I mean, are there any ramifications for this? I mean, my first questions were, okay, so we're going to have a settling pond for an industrial use on a residential lot. Now, the developer told me that they are, and it's been stated, that they're going to own and maintain that. And I'm fine with that, but, what does that do for the homeowner if they try to sell?
Well, so first I would say that is not a city issue. If I were a homeowner, I would want to be aware that there's an encroachment on my property for this pond. And that could dissuade some future buyer from that. But this homeowner, I believe, is aware of that and is comfortable with that situation, knowing that there's an easement and the developer is maintaining it. But anytime you have an easement on your property, it's a restriction on your property that'll show up, when you try to
Okay.
purchase the property. I don't imagine that it's a huge restriction, but it is something to be aware of for that landowner on Lot 2. But I believe they've negotiated that, and he's aware of it. He's here, as you heard, so.
Okay. On page 4, we're talking about design guidelines and architecture. Can you tell me what is the width of the eaves? I'm not that proficient in all of the specific standards, but I know on, our accessory buildings, we have a minimum of 1 foot. I'm assuming that these are going to meet
24 inches.
24 inches? Okay, thank you. You also, we talked about those accessory buildings on Lot 2, and you're right, they're not shown on the thing. What is the setback for an accessory building in our UR district? A side setback?
I think it's 15, but let me double check.
Is it only 15?
Okay. Okay. Because I did measure it on the county website, and it was 15 feet. I just wanted to double check. And then, okay, up in the maximum principal building height, it's 45 feet, and I don't think this is an issue, but I just wanted to clarify. It's showing here that these buildings are 23.66 feet in height. And I just wanted to clarify, do we measure height for this purpose at the top of the roof or midpoint between the rise?
Midpoint.
Okay.
And just to answer your question about accessory building setbacks, Mr. Chair, the side yard setback in the urban reserve district is 20 feet and the rear yard is 15.
Okay. So this would be a rear yard or side yard?
Yeah.
It's in the rear of the yard.
Yeah,
for
again,
certain,
they're not on the. Yeah.
I mean,
We'll see that when they update their survey to show the chicken coops, which are considered structures under our code.
Yeah. On page 8, the issue of utilities. Applicant has requested a variance from the requirement for municipal services. Staff has included a condition that once municipal services are available to the site, connection must be made. I don't know if this is a really dumb question, but connection to what?
Yeah, we were talking about that after this went out. I think the actual condition probably needs to be is responsible for TLAC services, TLAC fees, which are our area charges for development, and then you don't pay the connection charges until you actually hook up.
Okay,
Is that correct, Brad?
That's correct.
okay. So they'll have a fee even though they won't actually be connecting to anything?
Correct, we have the per acre trunk charge.
Okay. And then on page 9, down at the bottom, last paragraph under conditional use permit, last 2 sentences, applicant has indicated repair of personal vehicles will be allowed within storage units, but not in the parking lots. Staff has included a condition that auto repair will not be allowed within units. Are we talking the same thing, or are we saying that the narrative provided by applicant that they're allowing this, are we indicating that as a conditional use? Or a condition for the permit, that no vehicle maintenance is going to be allowed within the units?
That is what our conditional use permit standards, they do prohibit vehicle maintenance. I would say that you cannot do auto repair in your unit. I mean, if you're in your unit and you need to put air in your tire or something, I mean, we're not going to be doing that. But that is not the place to be doing auto repair, no.
Okay. So would that be something that we would expect would be in a lease for a unit?
That is correct. That should be in the association documents or the lease documents. But that is specifically, just to clarify, the conditional use permit standards, there are specific conditional use permit standards in our adopted code, and it says, units are for dead storage only. They are not to be used for retail, auto repair, human habitation, or any commercial activity. So again, you can't have an office there, you can't be repairing vehicles in there. That's our code.
Okay. I mean, I know one of the letters stated, you know, as we talked about the truck facility, you know, tools and noise and
Right.
everything.
And that's the intention. It's really intended to be a drop-off zone. You store things there, you don't conduct business there, and that helps address, I think, some of the concerns we heard tonight about noise.
Yes.
This is not an auto repair site. That's why our code says that.
Okay, on page 10, item 3, condition that storage of hazardous or flammable materials is prohibited. Gasoline, I would assume, is one of those?
I believe it is. I would call it that.
Okay, and I mean, this, I'm just trying to get comfortable with the use and what is stored in these, because if you've got like a landscape company and they're pulling a truck and a trailer with mowers in it, they're obviously, I mean, I can agree with having this as a condition, but I think we all have to admit that that's probably not going to be realistic in its strict appliance to that.
Well, Mr. Chair, the only thing I would say to that is, this is not your business, so you should have a business place somewhere else where you store your equipment. This is for supply. You should not have trailers full of lawnmowers and gas that you're storing here, because again, it's a dead storage only.
Okay, and nowhere in this report, nothing against, but I'm getting a totally different expectation of what this is when the narrative talks about, the narrative in the report, as well as the applicant, that this is for storage of business vehicles.
Well, the applicant is saying.
And trailers. I mean, when we see trucks, trailers, these aren't empty trailers.
Again, page 9 says, units are for dead storage only, and that's directly out of the code. And I appreciate that the applicant might think he wants to do something else, but this is the only thing the code allows. And so his rental agreements need to comply with that. If he's not, the city can repeal his CUP.
Okay. Okay.
And so we're trying to clarify that by saying, here's what the code says. That means you can't do auto repair in your unit, even if your narrative says you can.
Okay, I agree with that 100%.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'm sorry to break your train of thought here. May I ask a question?
sure.
My eyes aren't what they used to, so I'm going to try to read this, and if I get it wrong, please tell me. Page 9 from the code, units are not to be used for retailing, auto repair, human habitation, or any commercial activity except as allowed by this section. And I guess my question is, the people using these units, are they paying to use these units, or do they get them for free? Is this free? Because I'd like one if they're free, but if they're paying, then isn't that a commercial use?
Well, again, Commissioner, I think there's probably a lot of this code that we should rewrite, but I think the intent of that is to say not to have an office, but I appreciate that it is in fact a commercial use for the owner who is renting these units.
Okay, but as the code is currently written, and I'm all for rewriting code and making things clearer, because I think our code is very confusing in parts. But I think that the code now, as it is written, my understanding is it violates our code because there's business being conducted because someone's being paid rent. Am I misinterpreting this? And if we need to rewrite the code, but the code doesn't allow for this right now.
Well, if you didn't allow any businesses and they were all just private individuals to store a boat, are you making the same?
But they're paying rent, and that's commerce.
Mr. Chair, so, I mean, we would need I guess, this is hard when it's just dropped on us on the fly here versus an earlier email, we could have looked into this a little bit. But the meaning is regarding the tenant's uses of the property, is I believe the way we interpret it. But again, you've looked at it in advance, we're just hearing it on the fly right now, so
Sure,
we would need
no.
time to review it.
Okay. Thank you.
I only have, before we move on to the next commissioner, I just want to throw this out there. And I know, Kendra, you and I had a chance to talk about it briefly, and I know I've talked with the developer about it. And we've heard some people now talk about concerns, not so much one of the issues, but one of them is trash. I do find it rather interesting that we're allowing a light industrial use with no bathroom facilities and no trash receptacles. And again, I can go on about bathrooms and whatnot, but, at the very least, one of my thoughts was a facilities used like by a mini BIF, that would be screened at the very least, because if we're talking about business people that are going there to change things out, they could be there for several hours. I think it would be better than having everybody just run into the bushes. And as we've heard, there most certainly could be anticipated to be a trash problem. And what makes this unique versus, say, the other one is that there is no fence here. There is nothing to stop the trash from blowing through. And those I have concerns about, but I know that they weren't part of the report, but maybe we as a commission can discuss that later on. So I will now yield it to the next person that would like. Do I got any takers?
Sure, I'll speak.
Please do.
I also have a concern about the garbage. I think that dumping is a problem in Corcoran. I've certainly seen it dumping, and I'm reporting it. And I think that the nature of this type of business, and it is a business, that there will be, someone will leave and they will go to the nearest location, which will be somebody's yard, and they will dump something, or they'll dump it on the street. And I think we've all seen that living out in the country, but close to a built-up area, that's what's done. Animals are being dumped, and everything's being dumped. And it shouldn't happen, but it does. So I have a concern with that. I think that there should be, I suspect that the business owner is saying, if I provide the facilities for garbage, I'm going to have to provide pickup. And my point is that someone is going to have to provide some kind of service to clean up, or else the neighbourhood bears it and they shouldn't. Or the city does and we shouldn't. So that would be a concern. The other thing is the operable windows. I noticed they've got operable awnings. And I didn't read all through the security thing, but it looks like they're going to be, the windows are probably going to be the bottom of the sill at about 9 feet high. Looking at the drawings, I'm guessing. I'm just wondering about a security concern there. I mean, do the windows need to be operable? If you don't have anyone on site, is it a way to gain entry? I wish we had more robust architectural standards. I think the buildings look very good, considering we don't have the standards to help back that up. But I think facing a residential district, an existing residential district, and being up on a hill makes them very prominent. So, you know, I think that the buildings do a good job considering their use, but certainly I'm all for more architectural aesthetics on buildings, but they do a good job. As far as the existing trees, I feel that that's a discussion that we have outside of this specific project in front of us. And I would like to see at some point we discuss as a commission some kind of credit as an incentive to landowners to look at the trees and say, you know, what am I going to get if I don't chop these down, if I don't cut them down? And I should say they should get something. And I think that's something we should consider. With respect to this particular development in front of us right now, I don't know that we have the ability to actually provide any incentive, but my suggestion would be that this developer is actually doing a lot by adding some trees to adjacent properties, and they're not cutting down trees, so I would entertain ideas. I think it's something we could think about as to whether there's one way to reward this property owner for their efforts.
One idea I had, when we got around to discussing it was, so the staff says that in order to come into compliance without getting credit for the trees that they're keeping, they would still owe 15 trees. My suggestion would be, because I think it's very unique, and it was something I suggested that Lennar do for Tavara, you know, was to work with individual, you know, there are only 12 landowners, but to maybe work with them and work on a screening program that would suit each one of those lots individually. And that might include planting trees on their land. So I commend the landowners and the developer for doing this. But I would recommend that we give them credit for the 8 trees out of the 15 that they would owe technically under the mathematics, and so provide another additional 7 trees to be, again, put on the west side or to scatter in amongst the north.
In the tree preservation plan, does it identify the existing trees as, did I miss that in here, or?
Well, they're all.
I know where they are, I just
Yeah.
don't know what they are. And
Well, I know
again, I
there's
think that the
pine.
gesture needs to be rewarded. I really do, considering the discussions we've had and so forth. So that's what I have. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody wants to step up next? Mark?
Sure, thank you. You know, this just seems a little wonky. Is that a word, wonky?
You just made it one.
Okay. It just seems a little wonky to me because we have an existing non-conforming lot, which means it's already out of compliance. And it seems like this deal is just making it a little bit less non-compliant. You know, I do believe, though, from what I've read, that these conditions were pre-existing, meaning they weren't, you know, that it's not a hardship created by the current owner. So I do recognize this, but I also do believe that our code prohibits this. And if the code needs to be rewritten, then I think we need to put a pin in this, rewrite the code, and then address this. But right now, my read of the city code is that units are not to be used for any commercial activity. And there's commerce taking place here with the payment of rent for the use of these units. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schurlock?
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Following up on Commissioner Lanterman's comments about, this is one that came up for me, was no commercial type vehicles will be allowed within the units. I guess it's very difficult to define the word commercial type because a truck is not a truck is not a truck. There are different types of trucks, flatbeds, pickup trucks, vans, 18-wheelers. And who is going to be the judge of that? Is if the five of us were to go from unit to unit and take a look at various vehicles in there, we might have differing opinions about whether that's really a commercial type of truck or not. Or, well, no, I guess that's more of just a pickup truck. So my question is, who's going to be the judge of what's kept there? And what's kept there could make a big difference on the amount of noise that's there. If it's a diesel, for example, or something like that. The applicant has said that he will police this to make sure that no businesses are actually operating out of these units. But is that going to mean that there's going to be a periodic check every couple of weeks, every month, every couple of months, to make sure that what he is saying tonight isn't different than what's actually happening in practice? I also had some issues about the safety concerning traffic on 55, and I also have to echo the environmental concerns from our guests tonight about flooding and also noise. When it comes to noise, noise has a different definition to different people as well. Some people can put up with a certain amount of noise, but so who's going to monitor that? Can we measure the decibel level, or are we going to leave it to the neighbors to say, well, that's too loud? It wasn't too loud last night, but it's too loud tonight. So I have some concerns about this, and I thank you for my time.
Thank you. Commissioner Varenkamp.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. Were we going to hear anything from the applicant? Or are we able to ask the applicant some questions?
Sure, absolutely, if they're willing to answer.
There's no presentation from the applicant.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Steve Krause. I'm the architect for the developer.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And if it's just me, great. We've had so many things come in front of us and gone to the council and such. The footprint of all of these buildings is roughly 68,000 square feet. Is that about right?
Excuse me?
Square feet, 68,000 square feet. You've got,
Oh, when you add them all together?
add them all together.
A little bit close to 60.
60, my math is failing me a little bit off the top of my head, and I didn't want to use my phone. So, I mean, we had 75,000 square foot church on 30-some acres, and we're going to put this on half the acreage, I'm saying. I'm concerned with the elevation. Roughly 32 feet higher than the properties to the north along Horseshoe Trail, if the Horseshoe Bend Drive or whatever it is, it's sitting up on top of the hill. So go ahead.
If I may, but primarily because of the topography. correct?
That's what I'm saying.
Right,
It's
okay.
sitting up on top of the hill.
Okay.
The water that would shut off these buildings is going to go into the mitigation pond or travel to the south and east, I believe, to the corner of 55 and Rolling Hills Road. I think that is the direction when I read all of the topography and everything else from our staff and stuff. I believe that's happening. The mitigation ponds are designed to handle the runoff from all of the pavement and the roofs of these buildings, essentially.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so that runoff allowed post-construction is at or lower than what the current conditions are.
I understand.
That's what.
The permeable base of this is nearly all of this property is going to go into those mitigation ponds or down the driveway, is the way I see it. off of the drawings and such. The access to this property is an easement up to this property from Highway 55. It's a long driveway and it's an easement now. Okay, my question is, how are these units going to be rented out to people? Off of hearsay, off of a sign at the end of the driveway, off of just, how are all of these units going to be done? Because all I see on this property is the very first building, there's a utility portion. There's no office, there's no nothing here, there's no sewer, no water, no porta potties planned, anything like that. I have a real hard time believing somebody's gonna come, pick up, drop off without having to take care of some business, so to speak.
My understanding, the method used for marketing these properties, and the owner can speak, clarify, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a web-based operation.
Okay.
And so there are no needs for on-site signage or anything like that. It is a, as I said, it's a web-based effort to reach prospective clients, if you will, and that is the means that has served them well to this point.
And, okay, thank you. That was one of the questions in my mind was, is there something like this somewhere else in the vicinity as far as just general storage? Or can this, or would this turn into an RV storage, classic car storage, those kind of things? Even though our ordinances say that can't be done, what's to say that this can't turn into that?
I don't know how to respond.
Okay. Nope, and again, just, these guys are sitting here looking at us. I'm trying to ask all the questions I would ask if I was a neighbor to this property. Beautiful mindset, beautiful thought. I'm worried about security. No fences around this property, no gated access to this as the storage facility that is close by and such. There's no control of anybody coming in and doing any vandalism or anything to this property, or it's just not something that the developer or the owner is going to be worried about.
To this point, with other properties, that has not been an issue for them.
Okay.
And this model, this business model has been used in these other properties and has served them very well. If there is opportunity to revisit, I think they're open to those kind of considerations. But at present, they're going off of existing completed developments in other neighboring metro areas that have worked well under these guidelines.
Okay. If I'm out of line, please let me know, Mr. Chair. What is the clientele coming into this? A plumber that needed a building for storage, a construction place that needs storage for wood? What is stored here? What is the drop-off and pickup materials that are coming in here? Is there going to be semis, as Commissioner Shulak said, semis dropping off, supplies, lumber yards dropping off, those kind of things to a location here, turning around, leaving? Is that what's happening, so to speak?
Not to my knowledge, sir. That type of delivery, that large a vehicle, really wouldn't have an ability to navigate the layout as we have it currently. So it's
my addition on dimensions and turnarounds and stuff, these are utility trips, so to speak.
Right.
Self-contained builders, those kind of things,
Right.
okay, all right. It just, if I were a neighbor, it would be great to see this get started, but there's just so many ifs and so many variances to get it in so far off the highway. We're kind of building from the inside out, and I'm not a big fan of that. I just, to put this up on the end of a long driveway and not have signage on the road, those kind of things as far as what's going on. I know the web-based stuff probably works, and I know a lot of independent builders that would love to have storage like this, but they've gone different ways instead of relying on something like this. So the access to this, I assume it would need a right turn lane off of 55
Not at this
and
point.
such. We don't know any of that
No, it would not be
yet.
required at this point.
It would not.
No.
A huge safety issue for me. Rolling Hills Road is awful for the current residents and the drive-through people that are using it the way they are right now. Just huge concerns about Highway 55. I know that'll go away, but we don't know when the frontage road will be put in and those kind of things. There's so many more things I could ask and such. Again, great concept, great idea, but what makes it not turn into a RV storage, car storage and those kind of things? Who's gonna police it other than the owner? I don't think us as a city is gonna have time to verify the ordinance to the letter and stuff. I don't know if we're able to do that. When I've asked that question previously, we've never been able to run around and check and see what people have in pole sheds and those kind of things here. With Mr. Chair's dilemma on his property, wanting to do what he needs to, a ton more questions. I don't want to take up any more time. So thank you, and thank you for your time very much.
Mr. Chair, and if I may, just because who's enforcing this has come up a couple times. It's typical as anything with residents, this and that, it's drive-by code enforcement, which would be very difficult in this location, obviously, this would be complaint-based. We'd get a neighbor call likely that would say, I'm seeing this activity take place, and then we
Right.
inspect at that point. But, no, we don't go out snooping around and do monthly reviews of businesses, those types of things, so it would be complaint-based likely.
And just to add on, condition 7H6, we do require, as we have with other self-storage, a copy of the lease agreement from the developer to ensure that these prohibitions are included in the leases, so that both the developer and the renter are aware of the prohibitions on the site.
Can I just, got a question? It has 12-foot high overhead doors. One way to limit what's stored in there is to make the doors smaller, because you can't fit the vehicle in, and it would be obvious parked down on the site. I don't know anything about RVs though, so I don't know if if an RV can fit underneath a 12-foot overhead door. Usually 12 feet, unless it's stowing right above it. Usually,
Well, I mean,
not gonna scrape right underneath it with an RV, so I would ask, why is there a 12-foot high overhead door? What was the anticipation would fit into these units that needs such a tall door?
My understanding is the developer has that demand or that interest on the part of the clientele that he is connecting with, and it's just that type of clearances that they would prefer. Other facilities, they have an extremely difficult time keeping their buildings from being backed into and damaged, and so wanting to be a little bit more, offer a little more clearance, a little more forgiveness, if you will, for that to happen, so that the building stays in good repair longer, and that the maintenance to repair the damages that is all too frequent would not have to be done as often.
So there's something tall that's going in there, obviously, if they're getting damaged, because I know he's got the bollards probably at each opening, and I didn't see that on the site plan, but, so the height is because something tall is being backed in there.
Again, I don't know exactly if you'd like to talk with the developer himself, but
Most moving trucks are very tall, so when people are moving and need a place to store stuff, vans. The nice part about them is they put their stuff in and you don't see them for a long time, so.
Yes.
The less use we get out of our units, the longer they last, the nicer it is for us.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could I get you to come up to the mic so we
Yeah, can you-
get everything on
Please.
and such? So this is not construction material, this is home storage, anything,
It's a mix.
what do you see? I'd really like to help, but
We advertise on Facebook Marketplace, so I can see who's coming in. And that helps me weed out people that I think will probably want to be there when they shouldn't be, stay longer than they should be.
How do you make that determination?
Well, if you are working on site in a different location, I know you're not going to be there all day long, which is very helpful for me. And I mean, really, it's just talking to them. I mean, if you set the expectations going in, it's really easy. There's no surprises when the lease comes and, hey, you can only be there for this many hours or whatever before we're gonna start getting mad. Or start considering looking for a new tenant. And we currently have a building in St. Michael that abuts up to a residential area. And like I say, we look for renters that aren't going to be there very long or at all. We prefer if you're just going to store stuff there, maybe grab your boat every once in a while or whatever it is. I don't know. I know there's dead storage. I don't know if that's a concern here, but we do have some boats that are in there in the St. Michael units. But like I say, if you set your expectations on the front end, it's really easy on the back end.
Oh, but you would agree with me if I am your customer and I sign a lease with you, I can come and go as I please.
Not if you sign a lease. If on the lease we tell you you can only be here at certain hours, which is very common for many storage areas.
Okay.
Or you can only be here this many hours to drop stuff off, also common.
Do you electronically control the gate to prevent people, or like, how do you know, if I'm your customer, how do you know if I go there at 11 o'clock at night and do whatever it is I'm doing?
We have
do you-
cameras
Okay.
at the St. Michael location, and we're planning on getting cameras here. We're actually working right now with a telecommunications guy to set that up a little bit earlier so we know who's already going in and out.
Okay, so you don't have personnel on site 24 hours. Okay, so then you are relying on reactionary review of the video.
Well,
Do you have a full-time employee who does nothing but review video?
no, I get a text every time someone pulls in.
Okay,
So, I mean, that's pretty common with the Nest cameras. Really easy to set up, get a text. My phone,
is that your security system, a Nest doorbell?
no, it's a Nest camera. It's
Okay.
actually they make a wide variety of products.
Sure.
But it's directional. You can actually change the direction of your camera, and also it alerts you on motion. So every time, I mean, we do have 51 units, so I do get a lot of dings, but it's been manageable so far, so.
Okay, so if I were your client and I have a lease, and if I want to repair my personal vehicle in that space,
Yep.
can I do that?
That is up to the lease. That's, because like you say, we send the lease to the city, so, that's based on the conditional use permit. Whatever you guys want in there, I can rent out, you know. I had 37,000 views on my last ad, and another 5,000 people call me. I had, the St. Michael one hasn't been empty for, I mean, more than a week.
Well, the reason I ask is, in the application, it states that your company intends to allow the repair of personal vehicles in these units. Is that true?
Well, we had some cities where it was allowed within their guidelines.
Okay.
but it was based on time you're gonna be in the unit.
Okay, but,
So we
but
based
what is your intention?
I can, basically, if you do not wish people to repair vehicles, I can still rent that unit out. It's just who I rent it out to and where I send them. I will send people that want to repair vehicles to our other buildings and take the ones that want storage and send them here. And I have a waiting list that's pretty long, so I'll more than easily be able to do that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I also want to say that I do live right down below in the blue house, so I understand some of the concerns here, but we work hard to negate like the noise issues. We haven't had any issues in St. Michael. We've been there for, I think it's been 3 years now, so I know personally the homeowners behind, at least 2 of the homeowners, and they say it's been really easy experience, so.
So you live on Highway 55 next to the electrical
Yeah.
company?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right where the easement goes through.
So that was my question of the easement, you're the property owner that the easement's going through.
Yeah.
And then what buildings are currently on this property now? Is there a home?
Which property? The property we're.
Lot 1
Okay.
is the way we define it.
Yeah, there's.
There's a home and 2
2 structures.
structures besides.
Yeah.
Well, there is a third on the west end, a shed, but
Yeah, way over.
I mean,
I
that,
see.
I envision that's gonna
It's
go
almost
bye-bye.
a house. It's movable by.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the overhead satellite, and I just been wondering what, and who, and where, and all that. You answered some of the questions, so,
I have a
thank you.
question- Yeah, I have a question about how do you manage refuse and garbage that's generated from people moving in and out, or just eating lunch when they drop by, and you
Yeah.
know, how are you managing that?
So each unit, honestly, no one's there as much as you would think they would want to be there. The first month, it's like a new experience for the renters, so they are there a little bit more than, I mean, at least in St. Michael and the other buildings, they've been there a little bit more than they should be. After that first month, you know, they don't need to be there, everything's set up, they got everything where they want it, and they can just come pick their material up. In the case of the contractor, and the homeowner, they just leave their stuff until they need it again. So it's been very good in St. Michael, and the new building in Rockford, it's been very good. The old building, we had one guy that we did have to get rid of because he was leaving some stuff, but we picked it up as soon as we saw it. Like you say, we can see on cameras what's going on, so, which helped tremendously.
Sure.
So, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you for letting me do that.
Yes.
I have no other questions or anything.
Okay.
I have a lot, but in the interest of time.
Okay,
you.
Commissioner Lanterman.
I just have a clarifying question, because it's outside of my area of expertise. I'd like to understand, what is the difference between a company vehicle and a non-commercial type vehicle? Because it seems to me that a company vehicle is involved in commerce. So wouldn't a company vehicle be a commercial type vehicle?
I've questioned the same thing. I mean, again, I'll just go back to, you know, if you've got a pickup truck and a trailer full of mowers, that's a commercial operation.
Right.
And by, I think, most definitions. And those would be considered commercial vehicles. pulling commercial vehicle, or commercial trailers. Does that prohibit them from renting? I could see where they'd be a great company for the use of this type of thing. They can't park that at their residential unit, or, wherever they live, their house. We all have those kind of restrictions. And so I could see where this type of facility would be perfect for them. And I inquired about that too, and I'm not exactly sure. I believe I got a definition or a difference of, a cement truck and a pickup truck. So I can't really define it either.
Well, I guess the reason why I ask is our city code states units are not to be used for any commercial activity. And if you are storing commercial vehicles, that is a commercial activity. And that's a second violation of our code. Now, if we need to rewrite the code, I'm all for it. But I just think that the way the code is written now, I don't think that it allows for this, so.
Can I ask quick, well,
I mean, this is
Commissioner
open discussion.
Landerman, he's our attorney. I go on him. to
I'm not
defend
your
it.
attorney.
I'll take him in a heartbeat.
I'm not your attorney,
The
no.
definition of commercial activity, the meaning of is, hey, come on, see my store, see my supplies, see all of this stuff. Is that kind of what our code is as far as commercial activity, that they can't set up chairs to cut hair, those kind of things? I'm splitting hairs on commercial,
If you
so to
pay
speak.
for the haircut, that's commercial, that's commerce.
All right.
If my mom cuts my hair, like, sometimes she wants to.
You don't pay for that.
Then that's
do
free. Well, no,
I'm picking on you.
no, my mom makes me pay her.
But that's what I'm saying is, while commercial to Commissioner Landerman is different than commercial for me, and I love his definition because it's black and white. On my side, it's, I own a business, I own a construction company, I need to store lumber, plywood, those kind of things. I'm running there, I'm opening the door, I'm dropping it off, I'm picking up what else I need for the next thing I'm going to. That's not commercial to me, that's just, I couldn't have storage on my property, I have storage someplace. And the way that the owner was talking, that's kind of what he's doing. He's picking and choosing his clientele, so to speak, to come and store at his building. The thing that I'm concerned about, he just spoke about boats, classic cars, all of those things start going in there. Somebody's not gonna just pull their boat in, park it, close the door and leave. They're gonna wanna wax it, clean it, do whatever they can. And then again, we're back into, where do they do the other business that after, over time and having a few drinks of water or anything else, they gotta do something. I don't want neighbors calling and saying, they're doing it again. They're finding a tree and doing their business. That's the stuff I don't want, but it sounds like the landowner, the person that's coming up with this is picking his clientele and doesn't have those kind of things. But if we can't store gas, those kind of things, you can't have classic cars, boats, RVs, those kind of things because of LP gas. All of these things, if that's what we're telling him and he still wants to build, I understand that. But again, I wanted to define commercial for me. The way we're saying it is they don't have a sign outside their door saying, hey, meet me at my business or my commercial business at one of these garages. It's complete storage, and they're putting things there that they need for their business off-site, so to speak.
That's how we operate, that's how
Okay.
we interpret the code, that's how our existing business, mini storages operate. And storage of flammable materials, I think, is different. I have a rental unit. In the summer, my snowmobile's in it with gas in the snowmobile.
Right.
In the winter, my boat's in it with gas in the boat. That is not storage of flammable materials, that's storage of a vehicle, so I think that's different.
Okay.
And I wish someone would go to my storage unit and polish that boat, but it doesn't happen. So it comes home and we polish it. So you shouldn't be hanging out in these storage units, that's the point of dead storage. If you want to hang out in your storage unit, you should go to Medina.
Across the
and buy
street,
one
and
of
they're
those
really nice
units
places, sure.
at the
Sure.
Autoplex. So we have interpreted, and I continue to interpret it to mean conducting commercial activity in the unit. This is a business for them, and so what we mean by that term is how you defined it, Commissioner Varenkamp, that they're operating a business. The intent is, my mom and dad just moved out of the house they've lived in for 52 years. They rented a storage unit to put all their precious memories in, because they didn't want us to throw them away. We'll slowly throw them away. So they go there every 4 months and look at stuff and bring a new bottle.
Sort it and do everything, okay.
But there may be people that do have some commercial supplies there. I think that's how we interpret that definition. There are 4 variances, so I did want to back up as long as I have the microphone. You can certainly add conditions as a part of a variance application to require a trash enclosure and/or to require bathroom facilities if you wish. Those are both reasonable conditions. And it is an enforcement issue, but we believe the code does allow people to use the facility for either of those conditions. And then the other thing is, the language that's troubling you is language we took from the applicant's narrative about no commercial type vehicles. That is not in our code, that is not in our resolution. What our resolution says is they cannot be used for retailing, auto repair, human habitation, or commercial activity. That's an extra layer that he wants to monitor.
Okay.
One more question, and I promise I'll stop. If this goes through and if this is built, there will be zero access to this property off of Horseshoe Bend Drive, correct?
Correct.
None. When I look at the way this is laid out in the drive, it's all the driveway down to Highway 55. There's no cutting through, there's no access. When they start digging the pond, there's gonna be no excavators on Horseshoe Bend. That's an absolute guarantee. Whenever we do this stuff, we've had it up on Bellwether, where no one's gonna cut through the neighborhood to get to Bellwether. And the last time Bellwether came to us, there's a whole bunch of people west of Bellwether up there that is getting all kinds of construction traffic, and it was all supposed to come off of 101. So
They would have to drive through his yard, and I'm sure he'd not be happy with that. So, yeah.
Okay.
I can't promise you that no one, for a business owner to do that would be, I don't know why you'd tear through somebody's yard.
I don't know why either, but
This is as clear as it could possibly get.
yeah, it's one access, one in, one out, and that's it.
Correct.
Okay. I promise I won't ask any more questions. Thank you.
No, that's quite right.
Could I just add one more thing?
You bet.
Earlier, there was some discussion about enforcement. And on page 9, we have restrictions like no commercial type vehicles, no employee presence will be allowed overnight. And the question came up, well, is the city enforcing that, or are neighbors calling it in? I'll tell you, the city is not going to enter a locked facility without a warrant. So I will tell you right now, there will be no enforcement. And this is going to be on the honor system on behalf of this facility doing self-policing. So I just want to mention that, because we should not sit here and give the impression that we are going to take steps to monitor this, because we will not. Nor can we.
Well, that's a fair point. We do have ability to access properties for code enforcement purposes, so we can do that. But it's really no different than any single property, including yours, for example. You have rules that you can't do in your property, but we're not monitoring. We're not going into the neighborhood, the gated neighborhood, to go inspect.
I'll apply for a variance.
So, but yeah, it's no different than really, yeah, you're exactly right. In Corcoran, there's no active really code enforcement. Even when we did proactive code enforcement, it was an annual sweep.
Well, the best that the city will do is gain access to the unit with consent of the leasee. And there's not going to be cutting of locks and seeing if there's, something in.
Inside the units, Mr.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Unless, yeah, you're correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. All right, so I think then I've gotten a couple issues here that we need to give our city council some direction on. Either we add